crisis in Venezuela has severely intensified following the re-election of Nicolás Maduro, triggering a wave of violent protests that have resulted in 13 deaths, including 2 minors, and over 700 arrests, primarily in Caracas. Security forces have used firearms against demonstrators, exacerbating the tension and violence in the streets. Maduro has blamed opposition candidate Edmundo González Urrutia and Maria Corina Machado for inciting the violence, accusing them of criminality and terrorism. In contrast, González Urrutia and Machado demand transparency in the election results, claiming that opposition tallies show a lead for González. Costa Rica has offered political asylum to both opposition leaders, noting that there are arrest warrants against them. Internationally, prominent figures like Joe Biden and Lula da Silva have called for the publication of the electoral tallies to resolve the crisis. Lula, despite his leftist alignment, has urged Maduro to step down, highlighting the gravity of the situation. Peru has officially recognized González Urrutia as the elected president, accusing Maduro of fraud and dictatorship, leading Venezuela to sever diplomatic ties with Peru. In Mexico, incoming President Claudia Sheinbaum has called for transparency in the results and criticized foreign intervention, emphasizing the need for a peaceful process. This situation has heightened political tension in Venezuela and increased international pressure on Maduro's government, further complicating the country's political and social crisis. The violence and repression in the streets of Caracas reflect a deeply divided and crisis-ridden nation. The international community is watching closely, with responses ranging from support for the opposition to calls for calm and negotiation. Costa Rica's offer of asylum to González Urrutia and Machado is a clear indication of the severity of political persecution in Venezuela. This act of solidarity also underscores the growing pressure on Maduro to allow greater transparency and legitimacy in the electoral process. The reaction of international leaders like Joe Biden and Lula da Silva indicates a global concern for stability and democracy in Venezuela. Biden has made an urgent call for transparency and condemned the violence, while Lula, despite his leftist political inclinations, has stated that Maduro must step down. This highlights a split within the leftist bloc in Latin America regarding support for Maduro, showing that the situation has transcended traditional ideological lines. Peru, on the other hand, has taken a very firm stance by recognizing González Urrutia as the elected president, openly accusing Maduro of fraud and dictatorship. This recognition has led to the severing of diplomatic relations between Peru and Venezuela, marking a critical point in Venezuela's international relations. Peru's decision is set against a backdrop of Maduro's growing isolation in the region, where more countries are questioning the legitimacy of his government. In Mexico, incoming President Claudia Sheinbaum has called for transparency and criticized foreign intervention, highlighting the need for a peaceful process. Her statements reflect a moderate stance that seeks to balance criticism of the lack of transparency with opposition to direct intervention in Venezuela's internal affairs. This underscores the complexity of the situation and the diversity of opinions in the region on how to address the Venezuelan crisis. The outlook in Venezuela is bleak, with a collapsed economy, rampant hyperinflation, and a humanitarian crisis that has forced millions of Venezuelans to leave the country in search of better living conditions. Recent protests and violent repression have further aggravated the situation, leading to greater instability and social discontent. The Maduro government's response has been to harden its stance and increase repression, which has only deepened the crisis. The current situation urgently requires a negotiated solution that can end the violence and pave the way for recovery and reconciliation. The international community, including organizations like the United Nations and the Organization of American States, must play a key role in facilitating dialogue and pressuring for respect for human rights and a fair and transparent electoral process. In summary, the crisis in Venezuela following Nicolás Maduro's re-election has reached alarming levels, with a tragic toll of deaths and detentions, and an international community divided on how to address the situation. Demands for transparency in the election results and accusations of fraud and repression have exacerbated the tension, while Costa Rica's offer of asylum and Peru's recognition of González Urrutia as president-elect underscore the severity of the political crisis. International pressure on Maduro is increasing, and the need for a peaceful and negotiated solution is more urgent than ever to prevent further deterioration of the situation in Venezuela.
Top news. Give it a like and subscribe.